Okay.
So thank you, everybody, for coming. You were in October, we waited, and you came back, and I love it. Thank you so much. And the snow, I know, was not what we anticipated, but that's what happens in December. I know. But I'm very happy to present.
Supposed to get snow again tomorrow.
Oh, boy. John McPartland, right?
McPartland. McPartland, A-R-T.
McPartland.
McPartland, yep.
Is from the Connecticut Trolley Museum and enthusiastically is going to present to us some very interesting information.
Yeah.
I want to thank the Friends of the Library who always help us and the Connecticut Trolley Museum. We do have museum passes to there, so I thought this was a really good integrated
Yeah, I'm
program.
glad you mentioned that. Yep.
Yeah. All right, so we're very excited. Thank you.
First, I want to apologize for me being a no-show. The buck stops with me. It's 100% my fault. I have an excuse. There's no such thing as a good excuse for standing you guys up, so I'm not even going to bother wasting my time. I did explain to Maura, and I think she understands. At least she pretended like she did, and she pretended to forgive me. I hope you guys can too. So it was an honest mistake. It wasn't anything out of carelessness. I don't have any sort of dementia. It was a complete electronic internet email failure. I got a text at 6:30 that night or sometime from the museum. I was out and about living my life, and I was like, no way, no way. I wasn't in the loop on the info since July, so I missed it. Anyway, regardless of that, so we've enjoyed some of this. You've seen the city streets. This was San Francisco. This was 1906. So you got a taste of what city streets were like back then and how trolleys interacted with the public. What I want to show you, what we can get started with, is just an introduction to myself. My name is John McPartland. I've been a volunteer at the Connecticut Trolley Museum since 2018. I answered an ad in the Journal-Enquirer that said they were looking for trainees to be motormen. If you operate a trolley, you're a motorman. You're not an engineer. We have conductors, but a motorman is the guy that operates a trolley car. Conductor operates a train with an engineer. We have conductors. They're in charge of the people, but I'm a motorman. I operate the trolleys. So I said, that'd be pretty neat. I think I'd like to do that. And I was never a railroad guy. I really wasn't. People that I knew that were really into railroad, I thought that's kind of a weird hobby, whatever, but wasn't my thing. I liked automobiles, I liked boats and things like that, and the whole rail thing just never hit me romantically, but of course it has now. So they taught, I was a 1-week class of 1 week in the classroom, 6-hour days in the class. I was taught by a guy named Is this coming from me?
Yes.
Let's take care of that.
Are you going to play it?
No, not anymore. No, we saw that.
Okay. I just turned down the volume. You're fine.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to need volume for anything else. Okay, so that takes care of that. That, by the way, this is a view from Pleasant Mountain in Maine. Maine. That's Mount Washington. You can see it has its own weather system. Those are the presidential range. It's a beautiful view. But anyway. Okay, so that's how I started. The guy who trained me, I was in a group of trainees, but the head trainer was a guy named Ray. Ray was second generation Long Island Railroad. He was a signalman. Ray knows his stuff. Ray takes his railroading very seriously. So I feel like I got some terrific training. We had to learn all kinds of things about the trolley cars and how they work and how railroad works. I have to know all my signals. You know, we have signals with like yellow over red. We have to know what all of that means. Ray took all that very seriously. So I'm happy to have had that training. And it has served me well. So since then, in addition to operating the cars, I'm now on the board of directors. I was invited to do so last spring, and I'm happy to be doing that. And I'm now the head trainer. I've got Ray's job, so I'm doing that. And I will make the coffee. I'm Santa Claus. I'm the Easter Bunny. A little bit of everything there. Hey, come on in. I'm just doing my introduction. I'm John McPartland, Connecticut Trolley Museum. So anyway, there I am. And I am on car 4. This is Winterfest. This was taken a year ago, but this is exactly what I was doing last Sunday night, just a few nights ago. We decorate the cars. We decorate the entire right-of-way. with lights, and we take the public out in this open car. And you've been on it. And tell us what that experience was like in one word.
It's cold.
It's cold. It's very cold. And it's cold for you, and you're a passenger on that for a half hour. I'm on it all night. And the only thing between me and the weather is some of that railing. That is it. There's no windshield, there's no plexiglass. We're going 15 miles an hour down the line. There might be a 5-mile-an-hour wind. It's in the 20s, and we're built on a swamp, so the air is very wet. I've been at the top of many mountains as a skier, and I got to tell you, this experience is colder, but it's a lot of fun. I would have to say, if our museum has a signature event, it's this. This is what you'd want to do. Ride car 4, the open car, through our tunnel of lights during the holiday season. The right-of-way, so if you were to be going down the right-of-way, of course we have overhead wire, and from all of that are strung Christmas lights. So you have the illusion, there's no roof on the car, you have the illusion that you're going through a tunnel of lights. It's very cool. The reason what inspired that is back in the early days of electricity. Of course, electricity comes on the scene when? In the late 1880s, and America's using it for absolutely everything, including transportation. Some of the municipalities around the country decided, you know what would be nice? We'll string some colored lights for the holidays over our overhead wire. That happened before you ever started putting lights on your house, because most of your houses probably didn't have electricity at the time. So the tradition of Christmas lights on your house, in some areas, it probably would have evolved anyway, but a lot of it probably started from these small little railroads that wanted to decorate Main Street in their towns. So that is car 4, and there it is in all its glory. That's a professional photo, and I think Santa's probably photoshopped in there. Santa doesn't really operate the trolley for that event, but there we are going down the line. The car's decorated beautifully. The history of this car is is anybody here like a real railroad fan? Real rail fan. The only reason I ask is I'm going to talk in some generalities. I'm going to say about this year, about that. This car's about this old. If you want any more specific detailed information that I'm not providing, I'll look it up. But the last thing I want to do is say something wrong. So this car's about 100 years old. Its life was spent touring the city of Montreal. They had a 10-mile loop around the city. That's why no roof on the car, so imagine you're sightseeing, you want to see everything. And it also has theater-style seating. So it's like sitting in a theater as you go down the line. Right now, the car is going forward because in Montreal, it was on a loop. You just did a loop. Since it was the city of Montreal, there were 2 docents on board giving the tour. One spoke English, one spoke French. We don't have a loop. We go straight out. So anybody want to venture a guess on how we get the car back? Reverse, reverse, reverse. So we reverse. So the guy standing here has the power controller. The guy 35 feet down here on a platform has the brakes. That's usually me. So when you go home tonight, if there's 2 of you, somebody get in the trunk with a gas pedal, somebody sit in the driver's seat with a brake, and you see how that goes for you. But that's what we do. And we communicate with a series of bells. Ding, 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 3 bells get me started because 3 bells means reverse, I'm backing up. So I'm on the front, I'm on the brake end, we're gonna go backwards. I go ding, 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 he answers ding, 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 and back we go. I want him to stop, get off the power, ding, 1 bell, get off the power. He answers ding, 1 bell, we're coasting. I need more power, ding, ding, 2 bells, get me going, ding, ding, he answers, off we go. But what happens, really, is that you know each other so well, and it's only 1.5 miles. A lot of times I'll say, Andy, you just run those controls, I'm not even gonna hit the bells, because he can do that. And so that's how we come back in reverse. I had a woman, this was 2 or 3 years ago. It was a summer day, and I had an elderly woman with a gentleman, and she saw this car in our barn. Barn doors are open, and she wanted to know, when are we taking that out? When are we taking that car out? When are you taking that Montreal car out? Now, it was kind of one of these days, it's raining, stops raining, raining, not raining. It's a convertible. We're not taking it out in the rain. And did I mention it's 100 years old, and it has wooden seats? So I said, I don't know. I'll check with my dispatcher. But she was very adamant. She wanted to ride in this car. So I went to my dispatcher, Roger. I said, Roger, we got a woman out here. She really wants to ride 4. And it's never a problem finding operators to volunteer to run car 4. It seems like it's everybody's favorite. So we get a little break in the weather. Roger says, okay, John, bring down car 4. That's how he talks. So we bring down car 4. Somebody's bringing it down. I'm standing with a woman. I said, guess what? We're bringing your car out. And she's standing there. The two of them are standing there watching the car come down. And she says, I rode that car when I was a child. Me being me said, there were 4 of these cars. How do you know you rode this one? She looks me right in the eyes and said, son, I rode all 4 of them. There were 4. There's still 4. There was only 4. They were built specifically for this purpose. It was a special use car. We have one. A trolley museum in Maine has one, but I saw on the website last night that they were trying to raise money for repair, so it's not going down the track. The third one is on static exhibit at the Montreal Transportation Expo. And I'm not sure where the 4th one is. It might be at another museum here in Connecticut, but I'm unsure. But there were 4 of these. We have car 4. So I want you to remember this car, okay, for later in our presentation. This was taken when the car was brand new. This is probably its first trip. There's some passengers on board. Car 22. There's the proud motorman. Looks dressed like me, right? There's there's the conductor back there somewhere, but this car is brand new. Still has that new trolley car smell. And this is the Hartford, Thompsonville, Warehouse Point destination car. So this car was running in these parts of the country or in our area, right? A trolley, if you're not aware, runs on overhead electricity. And you have a trolley pole that goes up and connects with it just rides, it's just friction, it just rides on a copper wire and glides, and that's where you get the power. The power comes from here to here, down into the motors. I'm guessing this is probably a 4-motor car, probably about 45 horsepower each, probably about, remember rail fans, I'm being general, but probably about 40 horsepower motors, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. That's what got it. The trolley's going this way. How do I know that? How do I know the trolley's going this way? Well, that's where the motorman is. Yep, that's a great observation. What else? Well, I have 2 trolley poles. I have one here and I have one here. This one's up, this one's down. Car's going this way because I want this pole up when I'm going this way. Because I want to be dragging that, right? What if I had this pole up and I'm going this way? It's like trying to put toothpaste back in a tube. It's going to be very unstable. The car will operate. You might make it all the way back to the station, but chances are really good that that instability is going to cause that pole to disconnect from the overhead. That pole is spring-loaded. There's a big spring right there. That's what keeps the tension on the wire, right? So if you disconnected, now you got a trolley pole straight up. This is probably a 25,000-pound car. It's in motion. You've got all this overhead wire. That pole's just going to start destroying the overhead. They call it catenary, the overhead wire system. It's also going to do a lot of damage to the trolley car. Not an uncommon thing. Somebody just has a mental lapse. That's called backpoling. So one of the things as a trainer, one of the first things I teach is never, ever backpole. And we're adamant about that. And when I'm operating at the museum, I'm always checking is the correct pole up on these cars because we don't want to have an accident. But anyway, beautiful brand new car, new trolley smell. Just remember that car for now. I like to include a photograph where there might be something recognizable to everybody. Does anybody recognize where this might be? Court Square? Yeah. I think this building's still there. It was the last time I was in Springfield. Isn't it neat when you see a photograph that has an old building that you still use today, but there it is in a time machine all of a sudden, 100 years ago? I love that. I know from reading the magazine, from reading the book that I got this from, that one of these cars is Hartford bound and the other is Westfield bound. I don't know which is which, but that's where they're headed, waiting for passengers in front of the courthouse building there in Springfield. So this is early public transportation. Before this, how did you get around? Probably horse. And one of the things I like to think about is I like to think about what it was like in this area or what it was like in America right as electricity was coming on the scene. You probably lived on a farm. It's probably what you did for a living. There might have been some manufacturing, but if you didn't live near that manufacturing plant, how are you going to get to work? You can't take a horse 17 miles one way to work. You just can't do that. It's not practical. So when electricity came on the scene, to me, it's like, I think about that and it's like, wow, that's kind of when America came alive. You know, now we've got street lights. Now we're using electricity for everything, including how ambitious is it to use electricity for transportation in the early days of electricity, no less. America was extraordinarily ambitious in this period, as we all know from our history books. Coming out of the darkness into the light. If I lived in East Windsor, where our museum is now, it's very rural. Imagine what it was 100 years ago. There wasn't much. What if you wanted to get to Springfield from East Windsor? How long would it take a horse to get even to here in East Long Meadow from East Windsor? It would be a journey. And if you're dragging if you're in a horse-drawn cart, okay, at least you got a cart, but still, what a tremendous journey it would be. I don't know how people did it. I don't know how you got off the farm when you were in rural America back then. I really don't. But now all of a sudden, you've got trolley cars running anywhere you want to go. So the line that we are on is a branch of the Hartford-Springfield Railway called the Rockville Spur. So if you're familiar with East Windsor at all, if you know where Main Fish Restaurant is, that's where the depot was. We might see a picture of it. And you take a 17-mile journey by trolley through Broadbrook, over the Scantic River, through Melrose, into Ellington, then eventually into downtown Rockville. Downtown Rockville was a thriving city back then. They were manufacturing textiles like nobody. That's where the good jobs were. There was a lot of wealth, a lot of affluent people in Rockville. So now, you could take that trolley car if you lived in Warehouse Point or you lived in Ellington, bang, you can get off the farm and get a good manufacturing job. Or go to Springfield, or go to Hartford. And really imagine what it must have done for everybody's lives to be able to travel like that. So the Hartford-Springfield Railway started in 1893, and it yep, it's somebody can tell you, or somebody can walk you. It's right across the way. So in 1893, the first little trolley company around here was the Enfield Longmeadow Railway. That's what started in 1893. Other little ones started cropping up. Entrepreneurs with a little capital could easily start a trolley company. So we had all these little lines around, and then of course they start consolidating. This one isn't making it, this guy buys it, and just all kinds of commerce going on in the trading of the ownership of some of these trolley companies until it became the Hartford-Springfield Railway, and they had 40 miles of line. They ran on both sides of the Connecticut River between Hartford and Springfield with little spurs and branches like I just described to get you anywhere you want to go. Eventually, it didn't take long for them to say, you know what? All right, we got them into Rockville, we got them to work, we got them to the high school, let's get them out to the lake. And they would they'd build a spur out to Snipsick Lake or Crystal Lake. And the same things were happening here, and they were happening in all the municipalities. They were laying track, putting up trolley poles, and putting up electricity everywhere. Good thing, too, because when you did just have horses for transportation, whether it was pulling a cart or pulling a trolley, the early ones were trolley cars pulled by horses. There was a problem when we were dependent on horses for transportation, and what do you think some of those problems might be? Well, their shoes, yeah, your shoes. You got to maintain their shoes, right? Horses have to eat. Horses die. And what else you got? What else happens? What else do horses like to do? That's what our city streets looked like. Imagine if it rained. It was filthy. It had to be disgusting. It was a real sanitary problem in America when we were dependent on transportation in our cities. That's what it looked like. So electricity cleaned up all of this real quick, right? I'll get off this slide fairly fast, but this is 1893, and this is in New York, I guess, Morton Street, corner of Bedford, looking toward Bleecker Street, which I think is somewhere in a residential part of New York, I think. All right, but now city streets are all cleaned up. We've got nice electricity to transport us around. This is the Thompsonville station, so this is not far from us. And I tried to find out what year it was. The year is unknown. I'm going to make a guess that it's 1910. 1910 was about the real heyday of the trolley era, at least in this part of the world. The trolley companies had laid down a lot of line, a lot of track. You could get anywhere you wanted to go. The cars were nice. And here we are, good old car 48, taken at the Thompsonville station. I tried to look up this comedian to see what year he was performing, but he must not have been very good because there's not much of a record of him. But this is an open car. So these are running boards which would fold down. That's how you climb on and off the car. You don't have to climb in one entrance and walk down an aisle. You just hop in the side of the car and hop off. Very nice design. So that's an open car. One of the reasons they came up with the open car was because the trolley companies were required by their agreements with the state of Connecticut to run cars 7 days a week. That was the agreement. You had to do it. So great. Monday through Friday, everybody's got to get to work. And I don't know if I mentioned, but to get to Rockville on our line, it was a lot of high school students because that's where the regional high school was. You didn't have a high school in every town. So fine, Monday through Friday, plenty of traffic, plenty of good paying customers. Saturday, same thing. People still had to get around on Saturday, but Sunday there was no revenue coming in at all, but they were contractually obligated to maintain their lines and run the cars. So what they came up with very cleverly were trolley parks. Does anybody know what a trolley park is? A trolley park's an amusement park. It's an amusement park. It's a place you go, take your family and have some fun. Back in those days, we had a park in East Windsor called Piney Ridge. These trolley parks started cropping up all over the place, and some of them still exist today. The ones that are still in business locally is Quasi Amusement Park. I think that's in Middlefield, Connecticut. A Lake Compound started as a trolley park. Now, to be a trolley park, you could only get there by definition. You can only get there by trolley, and that's it. So imagine how clever these trolley companies were, because now they have a destination that you want to go to that's where their fun's going to happen on a Sunday, and you have to pay their fares in and out. How clever is that? If you don't have customers, create a reason for them to have it. So how smart was that? So we had our own version of it called Piney Ridge Park. Piney Ridge Park had a dance hall, which you'll see a photograph of. The dance hall was the floor was built on trolley springs. So just think about it. If you want to dance all night, you can because there's spring. Their slogan was Piney Ridge Park, we'll put a spring in your step. They also had roller skating inside this large dance hall. They had one of the biggest pipe organs in the country at that time. But then they also had a great activity that was the most fun thing to do at the time that everybody talked about, and that was baseball was huge at every level. You had these manufacturing towns like Rockville and Manchester, big rivalries. When those two teams would play, those two mill teams would play, both towns would show up. It was your only form of entertainment. It was great entertainment. So Piney Ridge had a baseball diamond. Professional ball players couldn't get paid on certain days of the week, and they weren't making the kind of money they're making now. So they would travel out into these cities and suburbs and farmlands and do exhibition baseball for a paycheck. A guy named Christy Mathewson, a lights-out pitcher, 30 wins, several seasons, played ball across the street from where my office was in Rockville, where nobody even knows there was a baseball diamond. Piney Ridge had Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig perform there. There's written accounts of that. It may be hearsay, but it's been published, so I feel safe repeating that. Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig coming to Piney Ridge. Piney Ridge also had something that you didn't have at home because since they had electricity, they had refrigeration. So it's a hot summer day. What do you like to do? Eat ice cream, right? So what a great deal. You are now, it's Sunday afternoon, you're out of church, you're out on the farm, or you're in the city, and you want to get out of there and do something fun with your family. You get on a trolley, an open car, right? These are called breezers, open cars. You're going 20 miles an hour or more down the line. It's like having air conditioning. You're together with your family. You go to Piney Ridge. You paid the fare to get there. You probably paid admission to the park. You probably had to buy a ticket to the dance. I don't know if the baseball was free. I'm sure the ice cream wasn't. So what great revenue sources these were for the trolley companies, these trolley parks. This photograph, this is an old one. And what they're illustrating here, the reason this photograph was taken, and you can tell this photograph was taken in the yard because look, we've got stuff there, we've got axles over here. But the reason this photograph was taken is because they wanted to promote their limited service. So if there was a special event, they'd have limited service. Special service will take you there. And that's what they're bragging about here. This is a promotional photograph showing off the Hartford-Springfield Railway as offering limited service. And so, if you were going from Warehouse Point to Rockville to get to high school or to get to one of the mills in Rockville, you crossed over this trestle bridge across the Scandic River. The remnants of not this bridge, but some of the concrete bridge abutments from later bridges are still there. You can fish there. It's called the Trolley Park. And I think that's pretty neat. Of course, they're in a closed car, so you probably feel pretty safe on that bridge, would you? 20,000-pound car. The bridge looks okay, right? I want to take a closer look at the bridge. Now, I'm just wondering, did an engineer sit at a desk, design this? When he was sitting at his desk, he said, I think we should have a board there, maybe another one there. I don't think so. I think a bunch of guys showed up with some lumber and built a bridge. I mean, isn't that what it looks like? Yeah. I'm sure it was safe. I'm sure it was adequate. But this was the state of the art. This was a bridge just 100 years ago. And I say just 100 years ago. I was born in 1961. That's not that long ago that we were crossing the Scantic River on this. I guess I would trust the bridge. But times have changed, right? Talking about Piney Ridge. So there's not a lot of photographs of Piney Ridge. But here is a car showing up at Piney Ridge, summer morning probably, or summer early afternoon. People are dressed in their summer clothes, and they're ready to go have a fun day at Piney Ridge Park. They had a carousel. We mentioned the pipe organ. Think about the carousel for a second. Very easy for me to manufacture one if I'm a trolley company because I have electric engines. I have electric controllers for those engines. I have brakes, and I know they had spare parts from wrecked cars all over the place. I could probably build a carousel with my limited knowledge of construction if I had those kind of parts. So lots of fun at the trolley park. Let me ask you another question. You know how rural Warehouse Point was at the time. How many people do you think they could have in attendance on a summer Sunday during their heyday? Pick a number, I won't embarrass you. 100, a little more. A lot more. 5,000, you're getting there. Believe it or not, in rural New England, in East Windsor, they had attendance records that were pushing 7,000. And I can say that because I've seen it in writing, whether it's true or not, but I've seen it on good account that they could have 6,000 or 7,000 people show up. When Christy Mathewson pitched for the Rockville Mill League, he came from New York. He was a New York player. And they were going to pay him $100. But he pitched so well, and he drew so many people, they gave him $200 for the game. How many people were in attendance? 7,000 people. In a park that people to this day don't even know that there was a baseball diamond there. But these mill leagues and baseball were huge. That's what America was all about. No internet, no cell phones. This is what you did on a Sunday with your family. How nice would that be? Imagine it's Sunday night or Saturday night. You live in Longmeadow, East Longmeadow, Springfield. Things are quieting down. You don't hear the highway. You don't hear trucks, right? But you can probably in the distance tell where that trolley car is coming home from Piney Ridge Park, right? You might see the headlight, you might hear it out in the evening quietness. This is the dance floor. How clever, put it on trolley springs. You got plenty of those kicking around. Whoever heard of that? But look how big this pavilion is. Another example of fine construction that they had. This is the pipe organ. That's a monster, right? So they had this big pipe organ. They would have dances here. They could roller skate here. Benches along the side to sit and take a rest and have a conversation with somebody. So this is kind of sad. Hartford-Springfield Railway, that branch closed in, I think it was 1926. In fact, I know it was 1926. They were bust, they were bankrupt, they had no more money. So what happened is they had to sell all the scrap iron they could to raise money to try to pay the huge debt that they had. So all of the rails were ripped up. The right-of-way that we're on is the actual right-of-way for the Hartford-Springfield Railway. This is on our line right now, this photograph. But all the rail was torn up, it was gone, sold for scrap. The cars, there are no cars from the Hartford-Springfield Railway because they were all taken out to where Piney Ridge Park was. And you can see that this one is stripped of everything, right? It's stripped of all things. It's going to be burned, and the scrap metal is going to be recovered for scrap. So sadly, these cars don't exist anymore. This woman probably wanted, she looks sad, right? And so for posterity, she must have wanted her photograph on this car at the very end. People were very romantic about their trolley cars back in those days. They really became attached to them because it was really the fiber of their community. So here she is looking very sad right before this car is going to just get destroyed for its scrap metal.
Were you aware of the trolley tracks on State Street going down?
In Springfield? No, not specifically. I'm in Springfield enough and oh, you remember the tracks? That's one of the things I wanted to ask everybody is because what other memories do you have of the trolley era or the remnants of the trolley era?
My grandfather was a motorman in Boston.
Oh, is that right? Your grandfather. So that's really interesting. Did you ever ride the trolleys with him?
No.
We have a car that I'm going to show you. It's car 5645. It's a Boston car. It ran all over the city. The person who acquired it from the museum back in the 50s went to Boston, was trying to make a deal on this car, and he said, well, I'd like to test drive it. So they let him drive it around the city. Could you imagine that? I think I'll buy this train. You don't mind if I just take it out? So we do have a Boston car, Boston Elevated.
I had an uncle who took the trolley a lot, you know, so yeah, that was nice.
Anybody else have any memories? See, the generation that rode these and that can tell those stories, we're losing them. We really are. And you're talking about your grandfather, not your father. So this era is getting older and older. And this.
He's got a picture of it.
Oh, you do? Do you have it with you? Do you have any other memorabilia about your father or your grandfather operating the car?
My father kept talking a lot and stuff like that, and then he decided to come to Massachusetts, Springfield. So, Malden, Medford, Melrose, all of them.
Yeah.
And my aunts were all there, so we used to go that way. And my grandma was there and stuff, yeah.
When my children were little, we would take them. Oh, that's him.
Yes.
Oh, wait a second. What was his last name?
Because
Okay, he looks a lot like a motorman that we've got an image of, but that's not him. It's just another young guy in the same uniform, I guess. If you have any memorabilia from him and you would want to share it with the public, you can.
we don't know what happened because they were up in Boston, Melrose, Malden, Medford, all of them. So we never got to go that many times because there was a bunch of us. So we couldn't just keep going back and forth.
Newspaper.com.
But I have a cousin that lives near him that was her grandfather too.
Oh, is that right? That's neat. We'd love to have a photograph. I'm sure we'd put it on display at the museum. But newspapers.com, you can access any article, any newspaper, do a search under his last name, and you might find
He was so powerful and so big because he drove a trolley.
Yeah, I think they were good jobs. I think they were good jobs. I think it would have been a very satisfying career to have operated them, especially in the rural areas. It had to be absolutely beautiful. And I think they made an okay living. I don't think anybody was getting rich being a motorman, but enough to support a family, certainly. So very sad, the end of this car. These guys are working on not far from where we are now. This is in 1896, and this is the Enfield and Longmeadow crew. They're somewhere along Enfield Street. The trolleys ran along, I guess that Enfield Street is also Route 5, am I correct? So this is somewhere along there. They have spelled Enfield wrong on the car. That's E-N-D-F-I-E-L-D. All right, not a lot of attention to detail. Now, when a trolley's operating and that pole is up, the electricity on that wire is 600 volts and they use direct current. For anybody who's into electricity and that tech stuff, we run them on DC. I think back in the Edison versus Tesla days, I think it was somehow determined that DC was better for traction power. It gave you a lot more power, but over a shorter distance, so they had to have tremendous powerhouses to power these cars. But anyway, this line is carrying 600 volts of electricity through that trolley pole and through this trolley pole. So these guys are showing off. These guys are showing off. This is a very brave crew of very hardworking guys. We don't know what they're working on, but these service cars acted as plows. This one doesn't have the plow on it, but they would plow with these, and then they also had the staging there so that you can get up and work on the wires and work on the overhead, which was always breaking and still always breaks. We have a service car very similar to that. That's how we fix our Christmas lights and do things, but pretty neat photograph. Yeah, I'll just hang on to this. I know he's doing it on purpose for the photograph. Of course, it's insulated, but he's showing off a little bit. But there they are. There's a crew working. 1896 would have been 3 years into this railway, so they could be doing repairs. Maybe they were going to lay some new tracks somewhere. We don't know what they're doing, but I don't see any yellow vests. I don't see any hard hats. I see a guy hanging on to a charged trolley pole. Things were different then, right? Car 286 of the Hartford-Springfield Railway, another brand new car. These were high-end cars that they ordered and used. These were manufactured by the Wasson Manufacturing Company. Has anybody heard of Wasson? Springfield's own, right in Springfield. I don't know what's left for relics of Wasson Manufacturing, but they manufactured a lot of trolley cars that were used in the Hartford-Springfield Railway. These are a couple of, this is a crew, so my guess is it's motorman and conductor, good old car 330, and they are at East Windsor Hill, which is close to our museum, and I'm guessing it's shift change time. And these guys are posing for a picture. And maybe it's a brand new car, I don't know, but I think this is just a crew getting their picture taken at the change of a shift. Remember when I told you to remember this car, car number 22? This happened 2 weeks after that photograph that I showed you. That brand new trolley smell. So what do we got going on here? Yeah, they're supposed to stay on the tracks. What had to have happened here is obviously they just had fresh snow. So, you know, susceptible to snow and ice and things like that, although some of the cars have sanders. You can hit a sander and it drops sand, but this happened before he was picking up passengers. He was taking it from the car barn, I think, to Thompsonville to go pick up passengers for the first run of the day. It was a brand new car. I guarantee, just like when you're driving a brand new automobile these days, if things tight, it's handling good, you feel real safe, you feel real secure, you might want to push it to the limits a little bit. Speed, this had to be operator error. That's all that it could be. He had to be flying to put this trolley car, not just off the rails, but all the way into the house. The account of this describes that this trolley pole went into a children's bedroom where two schoolboys were sleeping, It scooped up and picked up one of the beds and flipped it to the other side of the room. Nobody in the house was injured. And for years in Skidco, people knew which house was hit by the trolley. It was a story, it was a local story for probably 20 years or more. People knew which house it was because the siding didn't match after the repair, but also because somebody made a postcard out of this photograph and it was sold locally. So this was a local, if you're local to Skidco, you might know about Old Car 22. At this point, I'm guessing that the motorman's been fired. I don't know if he's home yet or not, but this guy's gone. So things happen. Isn't that crazy? Trolley hitting a house. 2 weeks old, 2-week-old trolley. Very sad. Good old car number 22, the one you saw in the beginning. Everybody's so proud of that great car, all smashed in. I don't know what the eventual story was. I don't know if they rebuilt it or scrapped it, used it for parts. I don't know. But at the Connecticut Trolley Museum, we have volunteers that would look at this and say, oh yeah, we can fix that. We'll take care of this. We roll up my sleeves. But I'm serious about that. I've seen some cars come back from near death like you wouldn't believe because of some very gifted, hardworking, dedicated volunteers who have tremendous skills. That's our museum. Couple of boys over here. I wonder if they were the ones in the bedroom. They're putting the car back on the tracks. It probably had to be towed by a diesel or a locomotive or something, or another trolley car. Probably it had to be towed back. But motorman standing there, no airbags, no seat belts, no safety glass. I don't know. Maybe he didn't get fired. Maybe he ended up, had a crazy demise. I don't know. But there they are, putting old 22 back on the line. Workmen and spectators watch as number 22 is pulled onto the rails with another car after its collision with the house in Skidco. It's not easy putting a car back on rails in the snow. Another nice bridge. This is in Melrose. This is between where I live and where the Trolley Museum is. Little trestle bridge to get over the real railroad tracks. You must have had steam trains running freight or perhaps passengers through there. And then the little light trolley car goes over the trestle bridge. This is one of those open cars like you would take to Piney Ridge, right? Did I mention there's no seat belts, no airbags? So when you're on an open car, you're sitting here and it's open there. There's the river, here you are. Hang on, we're going over the bridge. And it looks like a fairly crowded car to me. And I can't tell, but I think it's going that way. Rural America, 100 years ago. I love the city of Rockville. I had an office there for 20 years. I was on the Rockville Downtown Association. I love the history of it. Every time I see a trolley picture, it's always parked in the same place right here. This was, according to this description, this is 1906, and this is where the line that I just described to you from Warehouse Point to downtown Rockville. This is the description of this is that this was when that line opened, and here's the car in downtown Rockville. These are probably local Rockville business people that were invited by special invitation to ride the car that day. This looks like the motorman to me. There's got to be a conductor hanging around here somewhere, although I can't really see in this fuzzy picture. But Rockville was a thriving manufacturing city. People came from Europe by steamship just to sample the textiles that they made and to place their orders. It was a big deal, and huge rivalry between Rockville and Manchester Mills, although they manufactured slightly different textiles. I remember when I said I love showing photographs of a long time ago that have trolley cars and buildings that we recognize to this day. This is one of them for me and one for Ellington. That's the Ellington Library. Still looks just like that today. There's been a big addition put on, but there's the good old library looking exactly like this. This green looks very much like this today. This building is still there. It's now a house. That porch has been hit by automobiles a few times. The St. Luke's Church would be over here, but it didn't exist then. The cemetery, the Ellington Cemetery, is back behind here, and it did exist because there's some stones that go back to the 1700s. So very early rural Ellington, Connecticut. And here comes the trolley car right down Maple Street. People in Ellington look at that and just absolutely love that. On its way to Rockville from Warehouse Point, full of high school students and manufacturing workers. So I told you that eventually they got everywhere they wanted on a trolley and said, what else could we do? Well, let's get people out to the lake. This is Snipsic Lake on the Tolland-Rockville border. It's the watershed that provides water for a lot of that area. You can no longer boat on it. You cannot walk on it even in the ice. It's prohibited. But back then it was the place to go for recreation if you lived in that area. It's not that hard to operate a trolley car. I could probably teach any of you to do it in just a matter of moments. In fact, you said that I hosted a guest, or our museum hosted a guest motorman, and your husband operated the trolley. Oh, your brother-in-law. So one of the things we do is we have a guest motorman. If you make a $100 donation to the museum, you get me, you get a trolley car, and you get to operate it down back, with me standing there just telling you what to do. You take it you take it through street crossings with gates down, blowing the horn with cars waiting for you, and it's a lot of fun. Did he say it was fun?
Yeah.
And you can bring a few guests if you want, and it's a great time. So it's pretty simple to teach somebody the mechanics of operating a trolley. It's not that complicated. The guy operating this, however, has got a lot of responsibility. This is a steamship. It's powered by, it could be coal, but I'll bet it's wood-fired. See, he's got a big furnace on it. So this guy has 40 passengers, maybe? Probably 35, 40 passengers. This boat is probably got to be 40 feet. And the guy's got to operate this thing with all these passengers and keep the fire going. The person who operated this back in that day was very talented. So trolley cars got us out to our recreational areas, not just Piney Ridge, but in this case to Snipsic Lake, and in Ellington, Crystal Lake, and every community I've been to. In Killingly, they said, oh yeah, the trolley used to take us out to such and such lake, park. But just an example of how America had this can-do attitude. Let's get people out there. Let's get them here. Let's get them there. Once again, downtown Rockville, I'm looking at an open car with a trolley pole up there. It's going this way, so it's on its return trip. This building was condemned and torn down. The insurance agency that I operated had an office in this building long before I got there. But what I love about this is the Rockville Hotel. Rockville was such a busy city that it required a 4 or 5 or 4.5 story hotel that had a barber shop, had a restaurant. This was a city. When I told you people would come from Europe to go sample the textiles, they'd stay in the Rockville Hotel. They had luxury accommodations there for travelers from outside of the country. Road doesn't look paved yet. This green is still there. Everything looks exactly the same. I know I've stood right where that is. And again, one of those things where you look at a photograph and you recognize things, but from it's so far long ago. Just some interesting things here. Snow was always a problem. It still is. Trolley companies had plow cars, but you would face consequences like this. Very easy to derail. Too much snow packs on the line. This car is going from Snipsic Lake out to Stafford. This one looks like, I can't tell if it's off the tracks or on the tracks. Might be off the tracks. This is from the Hartford-Springfield line. These guys, that's probably the motorman. These guys are probably, I don't know, crew. This guy might be an executive of the railroad. These guys look like workers. If you lived on a street where a trolley car went by, you'd get out there and you'd shovel for them. You'd clear those tracks. You wanted to. You wanted to, everybody in the community used this as their transportation. So in a snowstorm, everybody would roll up their sleeves and get out there and shovel. This is interesting. Remember when, if you were here before I really started talking, we were looking at a street scene from San Francisco, and you had trolley cars, you had horses pulling carts, you had automobiles, you had pedestrians. There was no crosswalk, there was no crossing guard, there were no stop signs, there were no stoplights, so it was pretty chaotic, and there were, I'm sure, lots of accidents. So in the city of Hartford, at State House Square, they erected what is called the Aisle of Safety. The Aisle of Safety, a place where pedestrians can go and be safe from all the crazy automobiles and trolleys and all this stuff running around. Aisle of Safety, it had these, I don't know what you call that style tile, but they're ceramic, and there's the Aisle of Safety, keeping people safe. Downtown Hartford with a trolley in front of it. Here's an artist's rendering of it a little later. Now we fast forward. Now we've gone from the 20s to the 1940s, my guess, based on the automobiles. But the old Aisle of Safety is still doing its thing. Now it looks like it's fully enclosed. It looks like they've put up some barriers. Things have gotten a little more dangerous. But here we go. There's the Aisle of Safety right in downtown Hartford at State House Square. Guess who has the Aisle of Safety? Connecticut Trolley Museum has the Aisle of Safety. And there it is. This is our North Road station. That might not look like much, but this was built as a railroad station. That's where we conduct all of our operations out of. And there's the Aisle of Safety. This is off-season. This photograph's a few years old. But we've got benches under there, and that's where people can wait and be safe while they're waiting to ride our trolleys. Two years ago, maybe three, we had an extensive renovation on it. The cost was in excess of $100,000, but it's restored beautifully. And an interesting thing is, remember those ceramic tiles? The tile company happens to still be in business. And guess what? They still have the mold. So we had a few broken shingles, if that's what you call them, that needed to be replaced. No problem. They had the mold. They were able to manufacture them for us. So we've perfectly restored the Aisle of Safety. From this perspective, if you're going this way, it's probably 100 yards to our visitor center. People come out of the visitor center to board the trolleys here. On multiple occasions, I've had people come out of the visitor center and go, "You have the Aisle of Safety?" I go, "Yeah, we got the Aisle of Safety. We got it in the 80s. And one gentleman said, "Oh man, that's where we would gather every Friday night. We'd meet at 5 o'clock at the Aisle of Safety to decide what we're going to do for the evening, where we're going to go, and have our entertainment in Hartford." So we are very proud of our Aisle of Safety. All right, so some of our museum cars I can talk about. This is car 16. Car 16 ran out of Springfield, Vermont. You can see it's a multi-use car, passenger compartment here, storage or luggage compartment here, or whatever you might have been running. It must have been a very convenient car. It's a light car, it moves real well. And it took passengers from Springfield, Vermont, through the mountains to a resort hotel, a wooden resort that burned in the early 60s. But what I like to think of with this, it has rattan seating, it has all this area in the back. I picture a lot of people going on a nice vacation for the week. They're taking this trolley through the mountains. Meanwhile, all their fancy luggage is in the back here. That's our car 16. This is a really fun car. This is car 355. It's a Connecticut company car. You can tell because it's yellow and it has red accents and red letters. It ran in New Haven, in the Fairhaven, Westville section of New Haven. It was renumbered along the way during its public service, but there are photographs of it in service, and one of its duties was to run people to the Yale Bowl for the football games. So the photographs you see of it are classic. Men and women wearing fur coats, the pennants, the hats, and they're going to a game. So the capacity of this car, I think it might be 70. It's a pretty high capacity car, but don't quote me on that. But it was so popular that they would always overload the car. So there would be people in every seats. There would be people standing on this running board. There would be people standing on that running board. I've seen photographs of it on its way to a game. It rides beautifully. It's beautifully restored. You can see it's an open car. On its last day of service. Again, remember, people got romantically attached to their trolley cars. Rumor has it that there were so many people on this car that they were even up on the roof. Did I mention that there's 600 volts of DC current running up there? But that's how passionate people were. We love that car. We're so proud of it, and it's such a pleasure to take passengers out in it. Car 836 is one of my favorites. They're all my favorites, but this is one of my favorites, car 836. This car ran throughout the entire city of New Orleans. It ran on most all of the lines, many of them, including a line called the Desire line. Anybody putting together a connection yet? City of New Orleans, Desire, Tennessee Williams, streetcar named Desire, Marlon Brando, ringing a bell. So we think, this is one of those things, is it legend, is it folklore or not? But we think that this car was one of the production vehicles in the movie. If you go on YouTube, I should really add this clip to my video, but you'll see if you go on YouTube and you look at a trailer for A Streetcar Named Desire, the movie, in the beginning you'll see a guy dressed like me, standing right there, operating a car that looks exactly like this, and he's going around a turn. We believe that this was a production car that shot that video, and that maybe the seats were out of it, and some of the actors would take breaks in there. Production people would use it for various things. Car 836. I think we paid $1 for it, or it might have been free. I do know that the transportation to get it here cost more than what we paid for the car. And City of New Orleans would love to have it back. And I've heard that there have been conversations through the years with the City of New Orleans. We're not giving it back, but the price tag is pretty high up there. I've heard close to $1 million. They would love to have it back. And if you go to New Orleans, they have these cars. They look just like this. They're still running them too. My son sent me a picture. Dad, I'm in New Orleans. And there's a car, looks just like 836, same manufacturer, also in green, looks just like that. The only difference, the ones that they're running now are numbered in the 900s. And the only difference is that ours have mechanical doors. So when I want to let you out, I pull a lever and mechanically it opens the doors. On the 900 series, you hit a lever and pneumatically with air opens the doors. It opens the doors automatically, not mechanically. That's the only difference. So that is our streetcar named Desire. The inside is just beautifully restored, beautiful woodwork. Everything about it is just really, really wonderful. We're so lucky to have it. I think that's about, those are the most interesting facts about that car. But if you come to the museum, you can ride that. It was tied up for the last 2 years. It was laid up during its 100th anniversary. It's 102 years old. I ran this car Sunday night, and it rides like a dream. It's so nice to have it back in service for our museum. Car 1326, a favorite car, one of the favorite cars of mine. I did a lot of training on this car. I operate it frequently. You can tell it's a Connecticut company car because it's yellow and it has the red letters. And here you can see we're crossing, looks like Borup Road. We're going in that direction, that pulls up. I love it because it's just a traditional looking street car. And it has longitudinal seating. By that I mean the seats are benches that run along the side of the car. So there's a big aisle down the middle. So when we're having a birthday party or if Santa's going to be riding with the families, it's great theater because you've got your audience on both sides. So it's a really unique car in that regard. I should have gotten you photographs of this. So the seats that run longitudinally are made of rattan. And they've been torn up in this car for so long. It's hard to keep up with the mechanical condition of these cars, let alone get to the cosmetics. But the seating was very shabby. A friend of mine, Andy, who came to the museum a year ago, decided he was going to donate some money and we're going to redo the seats on this car. We just did, and it was a really fun project. The rattan came from, I guess from Singapore, and they only run this press once a year, so you got to put your order in. I need so many feet by so many feet. And then whenever they're going to run their manufacturing, they get to it, and that's when you get it. So we placed our order. We finally got our rattan, and we took these seats out of the car. We learned how to take them apart. We learned upholstery. We put them all back together, and things were going great. But what I suspected came true. The car's over 100 years old. It's made of wood. Wood expands, contracts, it warps, it bends. The seats were like almost like a snap-in fitting. It was like a pressure fitting. And and even though we were putting the same seat backs back in the same place, they just weren't going to fit. My hand, this was 2 weeks ago, my hand starts to feel a little normal, but from trying to pound these seat bottoms to get these back into the car, after 4 hours, we finally quit, and we just used some screws to hold them in place. But now this car has beautiful, brand new rattan upholstery, and you can ride that car at the Connecticut Trolley Museum. Car 3001. This is back when it was complete, together, and running, but needed a restoration. For the years I've been at the museum, I've never seen the car run. It's a Connecticut car. It's not wood. This is steel. Big windows with cages. It's in the process of restoration. We were awarded a grant for this car. The restoration's in excess of $100,000. We're struggling a little with the restoration, and I think the reason for that is our executives decided that we were going to make this thing perfectly restored as it came out of the factory back when it was brand new, and that grant money was written based on that. We could have done a functional restoration and had it back out on the tracks now, but we're committed to restoring this car to exactly the configuration, exactly what it was. We're hoping to unveil it sometime this year, and it's going to be a beautiful trolley car when we're done. But we've been working on a restoration in our shop on this car for several years now. It's been taken completely apart, and it's being reassembled with all new mechanics. It's going to be beautiful, but it's taking a while. This is the Northern. So we have this on static display inside our visitor center. You can see it's a huge car, but this car I think of the Gilded Age. I think of the mansions at Newport, and I think of when American manufacturing was taking off, and there was very little in the way of corporate taxes that had to be paid, so everything was flowing through to the business owners. There wasn't the cost of workers' compensation and other things, so there was just a lot of profit. This belonged to the owner of a railroad, and this was his private car. So you can see with the great details that it has on the windows. The inside needs a restoration, but you can see what was once a very opulent car. And just imagine, so it's Friday in July, you call your friends, what are you doing tomorrow? You busy? Let's take my car down to the shore. Let's take my car out somewhere. Imagine, that's what life was like. Beautiful car, we have it. After it was retired, the story has it that a man lived in it. Somebody lived in it. They bought it to live in, and he lived with a monkey. I don't know why that's relevant, but he supposedly, a man and a monkey lived in the car before we got it. Car 1850, this we also have in our visitor center. It's on static display. It once ran down our tracks, as you can see. Right now it's in need of repair, so it's on static exhibit. In fact, it's covered in Christmas lights right now inside, and you can see it. But it was shipped from Brazil. It ran all around Rio de Janeiro, and I looked at the route, and it must have been beautiful. You're on this open car, and you're surrounded by mountains and hills on one side and the ocean on the other. This car had a beautiful life in its service, taking people around Rio de Janeiro. The story has it that when it was shipped here, it had to be shipped by boat, and that it was packed with coffee beans, which makes sense, right? Brazil. And that when we unloaded the car and we started taking it up and down the tracks, there were coffee beans that were still in the trucks and in the motors, and that you could smell coffee when you were running the car, so it became known as the coffee grinder. And I take it back, this is not in our visitor center this year. We had to bump it outside, but normally it's in our visitor center. Normally it would be covered with lights at this time of year, but we had to make room for something else, so it's temporarily outside. You can't ride this car today, but hopefully soon people will be able to ride it. 5645, remember when I said somebody acquired a car from Boston and drove it around the city? This is it. This is 5645. So very possible that this would have been the type of car that your grandfather operated. It's a beautiful car. I loved it. I did a lot of training on this car. It ran all over the city of Boston. I forget exactly what lines. This says Boston Elevated. And just a fun car. And this has the pneumatic doors. You hit a little lever, doors open and close. The technology they had back then. So that's in for some repairs too. It's not running now, but it does run. It will run again. And it's just a beautiful, good example of a beautiful car in our collection. As we do all our own work, everybody's a volunteer. Nobody's getting paid. There you can see old 836 in there. I told you that car, that's our New Orleans car. It was out of service for a couple of years. Well, here's one of the trucks. There's the axles. That's the rebuilt engine, $40,000 approximate repair to rebuild an electric engine. That's one right there. That's our yard. I'm not embarrassed about it because we're a real railroad. We have to fix our cars. We have to maintain our lines. You repair a busted rail or a piece of track, when the scraps go over there, you fix it, and that's how it is. And so it looks a little sloppy to some, but we know where everything is. Volunteers working on this car. You can see that they're mounting the motor. We don't have a cherry picker fancy equipment, so there are forks on a backhoe that's hoisting and holding the engine. This is Phil. This is Jaden. That's David. Phil, I take that back. Phil does get paid. He works part-time in our shop. He's an actual mechanic for these things. So there he is. And don't ever let him into your house, and don't ever let him walk on your floors. I wouldn't let him in your car. I've never seen him without grease just dripping off of him. I told him, do not get in car 1326. You're not allowed. That's the one with the new upholstery. But that's Phil. So these are just very talented, hard-working guys. His paycheck for the day, 0. Paycheck, 0, but there they are. Everybody's working real hard on this car. Remember 3001? I said we're doing this fabulous restoration on it. Here it is. How's it looking? Almost done, huh? No, but these guys are putting in the floors. This guy's name is Mike. He's a union carpenter. He's got tremendous skills. He's there assisting Phil, and they're putting the floors in. The roof is coming along. The roof is now on the car, but it needs some finishing work. The windows need to be put in. We really are getting there with this car, but could you imagine what the undertaking is? And remember how I said when you take apart a 100-year-old piece of equipment, it doesn't ever go back together and fit the same way. It just does not. So these guys are having a lot of struggles, but this car is going to be beautiful. You've got to come ride it. Remember when I said I knew a guy that operated these cars in Boston? His name is Brian O'Leary. One of the greatest things about working or volunteering at this museum is the people that I've met. Our other volunteers all come from very different backgrounds. Nobody's done the same thing in life. We're all very different. The people that I've met have been probably the best part of my experience working at the museum. Brian was an old-time Boston motorman. Started his career as a motorman like your grandfather, then did buses for a while, but then grew into operating some of the more modern rail equipment in Boston. But I'm not sure that he ever operated this car, but we have a car that's rotting out back from Boston. I have a picture of him in front of that, and he operated that car. He also did a lot of snow plowing for the city of Boston. He's just got tremendous, great stories. So on a summer Sunday, as this was, you've got a fair amount of downtime in between runs. Just talking to Brian and hearing his stories about his career on the Boston Railroad was just fabulous. And unfortunately, we lost Brian just several months ago to failed health. Good old car 836. There's that New Orleans car. Isn't that a pretty shot? This is at our Station 6A. Station 6A in October is Pumpkin Patch. So we are here at the Pumpkin Patch. That's my friend Don. And our passengers are out picking out pumpkins with their children in a field. They bring them back, and we take them back on the trolley. I just thought that was a pretty picture. Our fall activities there are wonderful because we're built on this, we're built in the woods. So all of the foliage is gorgeous. It's a nice fall day. And nothing better you could do with your family than go ride a trolley on that day. You can see our aging track. It's not perfect, but we're not operating ever more than 20 miles an hour. We fix things as they go, but that's a shot from our line out at 6A. It's also Skylark Airport. Skylark Airport's the one who loans out a little piece of their land for our pumpkin patch. So if any of your relatives from out of town have a pilot's license, have them contact me or Gina at the museum. They can land at that private airport. We'll pick them up on the trolley. They can guest motorman. They can get off their airplane, operate the trolley back and forth, tell us what they want for food on the car. We'll have it ready for you. Nobody's ever done that, but I would love to have that experience. We have a lot of private pilots visit us and have been guest motormen. So that's car 836 at station 6A. Did I mention some of my other roles that I play at the museum? So I'm also Santa Claus, and I'm also the Easter Bunny. And I have nothing but a great time riding these trolleys with these kids, telling a story to them and having fun and joking with their family. It's great fun. We're on car 1326 with the old rattan seats that are running longitudinally in the car like I described to you. Did I mention the other roles that I play at the Connecticut Trolley Museum? So that completes my presentation. And was there anything else I wanted to show you? I think that's it. You guys didn't have a lot of questions, and you're not a big crowd, so I kind of whipped through this thing in an hour and 10 minutes. I usually go a little longer, but after seeing this, what would you like to talk about? What questions do you have? Yeah.
Is this trolley museum going to be open?
Is the trolley museum going to be open?
Yeah.
Well, we're open now. We're open throughout the whole month of December. We have Winter Fest where we take you down the lights through the tunnel of lights at night. And then the daytime activities that we have is we have 2 days where Santa rides with the children and tells them stories. Then we close after the first of the year. We don't have operating hours. We still go in and maintain things, but then we open back up. Kind of a soft opening in February and March. We open on some Saturdays to take the public out.
Is it open today in December?
Today, no. No weekdays. Museum's closed today. The next run will be Friday night for Winterfest. And then Saturday, they'll have daytime runs on car 1326 with Santa, and then they'll do the tunnel of lights at night. And if you want to go to the museum, you got to book your tickets online. You got to tell them what time you want to run, and the whole website will show you where everything is.
Did they ever use lanterns?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Oh yeah, I'm sure they did.
We have a lantern that was donated to the museum, and it's red, and it looks like it fits into a slot, and you
Yep.
can take it out. And I think we were told that they would switch out white and red to show the directions of the trolley.
Yeah, white's your headlight.
Right.
Red's your tail light.
So if you were going in one direction, you would switch the lantern
That's
to
right.
show that you were going backward.
And we still do it, it's just not with
That's
kerosene lanterns, yep. We have a headlights on the car, and then sometimes we travel with these magnetic, battery-powered or rechargeable red lights that flash for the tail, so you can see what direction the trolley car is going in. Yep, if you want to know anything more, if you ever want to know more about that, contact the museum, take a phone picture. We've got guys at the museum that are lantern experts. This hobby has so much depth, and the people that I'm surrounded by as volunteers at the museum know so much. And that's why I ask at the beginning of the presentation, is anybody a railroad fan? Because I don't want to accidentally make a mistake. These guys, I have somebody at the museum who could probably take one look at your lantern and say, oh, that was manufactured by such and such. And I'd say that's from we've got real experts. So if you want more knowledge about it, swing by the museum on a weekend day or take a picture. Somebody will get back to you and tell you all about it. We got guys that collect lanterns. We have a guy that collects horns. We have, I collect trolley tokens. I didn't bring any, but I have trolley tokens from the Hartford-Springfield Railway, and it even says high school on it. So I've got some tokens that a high school student would have had to use to get back and forth on the trolley car. When I was a little boy, my grandmother, who was born in 1891 and talked fondly of the trolley era when I was a kid, but I couldn't conceptualize really what trolleys were all about. But she'd come to visit, and she'd have a cigar box with some coins in it. Nothing valuable, but all different things that I had never seen before. Some Canadian, all kinds of different things. And she'd say, okay, Jonathan, you can pick a coin. And I would always pick one with a hole in it because I just thought that was neat. And she would always say, put that back. That's just an old trolley token. Well, Nana, I'm paying $6 for these things on eBay now. What other questions? Anything else from that era that that you think about?
Just a thought, and the move to try to go to electric vehicles right now. It's just interesting that that existed.
We were doing it.
It was already happening.
Oh, yeah.
It went away. And
Oh,
now,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and we had trolley lines. I mean, it wouldn't have been easy, but you could pretty much get anywhere you wanted in the country. You just had to change trolleys a bunch of times and probably buy a lot of fares. It might not have been practical, but it was possible. Trolley lines were everywhere, and they were running on electricity. Nice, clean energy. And what do you think? Why did the trolley era end? And by the way, some of these cars that I showed you, I know that they've probably run more service hours at our museum than they ever did for the public. And they were running constantly. What do you think? What happened to the trolley era? Yeah, Henry Ford killed that, the mass production of the automobile. And some of these trolley companies were sold to bus companies, coach companies, and some of the trolley manufacturers are now bus manufacturers. In fact, you were probably behind one today and you weren't so happy. If you are behind a yellow school bus and it says Thomas on the back, that's Pearly Thomas. They used to make trolley cars. They're still in business to this day. But it was just a neat era of time. I love mentally going back there in my mind. I love taking passengers for rides. If anybody ever had any idea that they are looking for something to do in their spare time, the museum has a job for you, whether it's operating the cars or doing anything.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I apologize for being absent on my last visit, but I'm glad we made it up tonight.